United States just executed a military operation in Venezuela. President Maduro captured, flown to New York in handcuffs, 303 billion barrels of oil, the world's largest reserve. Who controls it now? Not Venezuela. Saudi Arabia launched over 100 airstrikes. Target, UAE-backed forces in Yemen. Former allies bombing each other over oil-rich provinces. When Gulf partners turn guns on each other, energy markets don't stay stable. Your supply chains don't stay predictable. Pause. China single quotes as BYD just dethroned Tesla. To point to 6 million electric vehicles sold. Tesla down 9%. First time in years they're not number one. If you thought Western companies controlled the future of transportation, you weren't paying attention to who controls the batteries, the rare earths, the manufacturing capacity. 3 stories. One pattern. Power is moving. Capital is repricing, and most people won't see it until it's too late. This is not opinion. This is alert. Before we break down what's really happening behind these headlines, if you're the kind of person who wants to see risk before it becomes obvious, hit that like button right now. Drop a comment below on which of these 3 developments concerns you most. Your business, your investments, your supply chain, and share this with someone in your network who needs to understand what's coming before the market forces them to react. Let's begin. First news, U.S. military operation in Venezuela won 5 minutes. Opening hour January 3rd, 2026, 2:01 a.m. Caracas time. United States military helicopters descended on Venezuela's presidential compound. 29 minutes later, Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were in American custody. Destination, New York City. This happened. Operation Absolute Resolve is complete. What happened? The facts are public and verified. More than 150 United States aircraft launched from 20 bases across the Western Hemisphere. Delta Force led the extraction team. CIA operatives had been embedded inside Venezuela since August 2025, tracking every movement, every pattern, every security detail. American forces disabled Venezuela's air defense systems before the operation began. Explosions rang across Caracas as the city went dark. What President Trump called certain expertise took out the power grid. Helicopters came under fire. One was hit, but remained flyable. U.S. forces returned fire with precision. By 4:29 a.m., Maduro was aboard the USS Iwo Jima in international waters. By 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, he touched down at Stewart Air National Guard Base in New York. He now faces federal narcoterrorism charges in the Southern District of New York, building on a 2020 indictment. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez immediately assumed presidential duties per the Supreme Court's emergency decree. She called it kidnapping, she called it barbaric, she called it illegitimate. Cuba and Venezuelan officials report more than 80 people killed in the strikes. 32 were Cuban military and intelligence members stationed in Venezuela. The United Nations Security Council convened at the request of Colombia, Russia, and China. President Trump stated at Mar-a-Lago, "We're going to run Venezuela essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place." Today, January 5th, Maduro appeared in federal court in Manhattan. His lawyer Barry Pollock, the same attorney who brokered Julian Assange's plea deal, is representing him. His wife has separate counsel from Houston. If this is connecting dots you hadn't seen before, tap that like button. Your engagement helps. Spread these signals. What's being said? The Trump administration frames this as law enforcement, not regime change. Attorney General Pam Bondi emphasized the narcoterrorism charges. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth called it a massive joint military and law enforcement raid. He specifically stated this is the exact opposite of Iraq. No decades-long occupation. No blood for nothing. Secretary of State Marco Rubio walked back Trump's run Venezuela comment. He clarified, "What's going to happen here is we have a quarantine on their oil. That means their economy will not be able to move forward until the conditions that are in the national interest of the United States and the interests of the Venezuelan people are met." Translation, oil leverage, economic strangulation, behavioral modification. Members of Congress from both parties have raised objections. No congressional authorization for use of military force was granted for this operation. Senator Mark Warner, Vice Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, expressed concerns about the precedent. Senator Tom Cotton, Chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said we have to make sure the people in charge of the apparatus of the Venezuelan government are not going to continue Nicolas Maduro's ways. Russia's foreign ministry condemned it as flagrant armed aggression. Iran described it as a violation of sovereignty. China's President Xi Jinping, in his first public comments since the operation, condemned what he called unilateral hegemonic bullying without mentioning the United States by name. He said the world today is fraught with turmoil, and all countries should respect the development paths chosen independently by the people of other countries. Chile's president-elect José Antonio Cast praised the operation, calling Maduro illegitimate. At his capture great news, the UN Security Council held an emergency meeting today. Economist Jeffrey Sachs testified, stating abandoning the United Nations Charter and its prohibition of this kind of action would carry consequences of the gravest kind. He said peace and the survival of humanity depend on whether the UN Charter remains a living instrument or is allowed to wither into irrelevance. Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope, urged overcoming violence and embarking on paths of justice and peace, guaranteeing the sovereignty of the country. Drop a comment right now. What's your read on the international response, legal operation, or dangerous precedent? What's not being highlighted? 5 months of covert CIA operations inside a sovereign nation, planting operatives, mapping security protocols, infiltrating inner circles. This wasn't improvised. This was methodical preparation. The timing, Trump's second term, day one priorities. No congressional debate, no alliance consultation, unilateral action. The legal framework being used, narcoterrorism charges, not human rights violations, not election fraud, not crimes against humanity, drug trafficking. This specific framing bypasses certain international law constraints. Venezuela's response shows internal fracture. Delcy Rodriguez called for Maduro's immediate release on Saturday. By Sunday, she was calling for cooperation with the United States. That shift happened in less than 24 hours. What changed? What leverage was applied? Trump stated on Sunday, "We're in charge of Venezuela." He has not spoken to Rodriguez, but said she is cooperating. He demanded total access to the country's oil reserves. He said if she doesn't do what's right, she is going to pay a very big price, probably bigger than Maduro. Cuba. Trump said Cuba only survived because of Venezuela. Now they won't have that money coming in. They won't have the income coming in. A lot of Cubans were killed yesterday. Those Cubans were trying to protect Maduro. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. They got all of their income from Venezuelan oil. They're not getting any of it. Cuba literally is ready to fall. Which of these signals concerns you most? Let me know in the comments below. Impact on power, economy, and stability. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, 303 billion barrels, larger than Saudi Arabia, larger than Russia. That's what's at stake. Current production, 934,000 barrels per day in November, less than 1% of global demand, down from over 3 million barrels per day in the late 1990s and early 2000s. The decline began under Hugo Chavez and accelerated under Maduro. Then came U.S. sanctions in January 2019. The sanctions aimed to force regime change by cutting off oil income. They worked on the economic destruction side. They failed on the regime change side. Until now, Venezuela's oil industry has been hollowed out. Chronic mismanagement, politicization, underinvestment, years of capital flight, loss of technical expertise, decaying infrastructure, PDVSA. The state oil company has been struggling to maintain even basic operations. Here's what analysts are missing. Oil markets barely reacted to this news. Why? Because new supply is flooding in from Brazil, Guyana, Argentina, and the United States. OPEC Plus has begun unwinding voluntary cuts totaling nearly 4 million barrels a day. The International Energy Agency projects supply could exceed demand by as much as 2 million barrels per day in 2026. But here's the real game. Rebuilding Venezuela's oil industry is the work of a decade. It requires hundreds of billions of dollars in investment. It requires technological transfers. American oil companies are lining up. Chevron already has a presence. Chevron stock jumped 7% on this news. ExxonMobil up for 0.2%. Halliburton, oilfield services leader, popped 9%. When those barrels finally come, and they will, they're designed to structurally weaken OPEC+. Some analysts predict this could deliberately crash prices to cripple rivals like Russia and Iran. That's the long game. Energy security, supply chain realignment, geopolitical leverage. This isn't about one man. This is about 303 billion barrels. If you're seeing the bigger picture now, share this video with your network. This is the kind of analysis your competition isn't tracking. Provocative Clausewell pays the price when military operations become the default tool. For energy security, how many countries are recalculating right now what sovereignty means when you sit on strategic resources? This operation took 5 months to plan. It took 29 minutes to execute. It will take decades to understand the full consequences. Second news, Saudi Arabia-Yemen conflict escalation 9 minutes opening alert. Wow. The world watched Venezuela. The Gulf erupted. Saudi Arabia just launched over 100 airstrikes against forces backed by its supposed ally, the United Arab Emirates, in Yemen. 7 confirmed dead, over 20 wounded, airports hit, military camps destroyed. This isn't Houthis. This is Saudi Arabia bombing UAE-backed separatists. Former coalition partners now at war. What happened at January 2nd, 2026? Saudi warplanes struck forces of the Southern Transitional Council, the STC, in Yemen's Hadramaut province. The STC is a UAE-backed separatist movement seeking to restore South Yemen's independence. Last month, December 2025, the STC launched Operation Promising Future. They seized control of Hadramaut and Mara governorates. These 2 provinces make up nearly half of Yemen's territory. They're also oil-rich and border Saudi Arabia. This pushed out Saudi-backed National Shield forces. Saudi Arabia gave an ultimatum: withdraw or face consequences. The STC refused. Friday, January 3rd, Saudi Arabia launched what it called a peaceful operation to retake military sites. Peaceful, with over 100 airstrikes. Mohammed Abdul Malik, head of the STC in Wadi Hadramaut, reported 7 direct strikes on Al-Qasa camp alone. 7 separatists killed, more than 20 wounded. Barsha Brigade camp west of Mukalla was hit. Sayun International Airport was struck, risking infrastructure damage and flight operations. By Sunday, January 5th, Saudi-backed forces had retaken Mukalla, the capital of Hadramaut province. Residents welcomed them in the streets. The STC withdrew from military camps. Mara province forces switched loyalty from the STC to Saudi-backed forces without resistance. They lowered the separatist flag and raised the Yemeni national flag. The UAE, facing Saudi pressure, announced early Saturday it had pulled out all its forces from Yemen. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry announced it will host a conference in Riyadh to bring together all southern factions to discuss solutions. The STC welcomed the invitation, calling it the only rational means to address political issues. If you're tracking how quickly alliances shift under pressure, drop a comment below. What's being said? Saudi ambassador to Yemen, Mohammed Al-Jaber, said the kingdom tried all efforts with the STC for weeks to stop the escalation and urged them to leave Hadramaut and Mara. He accused STC leader Idris al-Zubaydi of continued intransigence and rejection. Salem al-Kambashi, the governor of Hadramaut, chosen by Yemen's internationally recognized government to command Saudi-led forces, said the strikes were necessary. He refuted STC claims as ridiculous and showing intentions of escalation. Instead of peaceful handover. Mohammed al-Nakib, spokesperson for STC-backed Southern Shield Forces, accused Saudi Arabia of using Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda militias in a large-scale attack. He likened the latest developments to Yemen's 1994 civil war, except that this time it is under the cover of Saudi aviation operations. The UAE expressed deep concern over the ongoing escalation and called on Yemenis to prioritize wisdom and exercise restraint to ensure security and stability. Rashad al-Alimi, head of Yemen's Presidential Leadership Council, said Saudi-backed forces achieved record success in retaking all military and security sites in Hadramaut. What do you think? Strategic necessity or escalation spiral? Comment below. What's not being highlighted? Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been coalition partners since 2015. They launched a devastating war against Yemen to reinstall the overthrown government and crush the Houthi movement. They've been on the same side for a decade. Now they're bombing each other's proxies. Why? Competition. Saudi Arabia and the UAE have been competing over economic issues and regional politics for years. Yemen is just the latest battlefield. The STC seized oil-rich regions. Hadramaut produces a significant portion of Yemen's remaining oil output. That oil money was supposed to go to the Saudi-backed government. Instead, the STC, backed by the UAE, took control. Saudi Arabia sees this as a direct threat to its national security. Hadramaut borders Saudi territory. Having a UAE-backed separatist force controlling that border is unacceptable to Riyadh. The UAE has been pursuing its own strategic interests in Yemen for years. Control of ports, control of trade routes, control of energy infrastructure. The STC is their vehicle for influence. This fracture in the anti-Houthi coalition weakens the entire structure. If Saudi Arabia and the UAE can't coordinate in Yemen, what does that mean for other regional issues? Iran, energy markets, Red Sea security? Which angle concerns you most? Drop it in the comments. Impact on power, economy, and stability. Yemen has been engulfed in civil war for over a decade. The Houthis control much of the north. The Saudi-led coalition supports the internationally recognized government in the south. But now the coalition itself is fractured. Energy security in the region. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, one of the world's most important shipping choke points, runs along Yemen's coast. Any instability here impacts global trade, oil tankers, container ships, liquefied natural gas shipments. The Houthis have been attacking shipping in the Red Sea for over a year, claiming solidarity with Gaza. If the anti-Houthi coalition collapses, who counters that threat? Humanitarian costs. Yemen is already facing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Millions displaced. Food insecurity. Collapsing infrastructure. This new escalation between former allies makes everything worse. Regional power balance. If Saudi Arabia can bomb UAE-backed forces with impunity, what does that signal about Gulf Cooperation Council unity, about collective security arrangements, about who actually calls the shots? Iran is watching. Russia is watching. China is watching. Every adversary is taking notes on coalition fragility. Share this video if you're tracking regional stability risks. Provocative clause when allies start bombing each other's proxies. That's not a policy disagreement. That's a structural fracture. How long before this spills beyond Yemen's borders? Saudi Arabia just proved it will use military force against its own coalition partners. When strategic interests diverge, that precedent matters. Third news, bid dethrones Tesla globally 6 minutes opening alert while geopolitics dominated. Headlines, a quiet revolution concluded in the automotive industry. China's BYD just overtook Tesla as the world's largest electric vehicle seller. For the first time in years, Tesla is not number one. The point is 6 million units. That's what BYD sold in 2025, up 28% year-over-year. Tesla, 1.6 per million, down 9%. This isn't quarterly fluctuation. This is a throne changing hands. What happened? It announced on Thursday, January 2nd, that it sold to million to 150 for 1,714 all-electric vehicles in 2025. That's a massive 27.9% increase year-over-year for its battery electric lineup. Tesla reported on Friday, January 3rd, that it delivered 1.6 million vehicles in 2025. That's an 8.6% decline from 2024. This marks Tesla's second straight year of declining sales, the biggest annual drop in company history. Fourth quarter numbers tell the same story. Tesla delivered about 418,000 vehicles, down 15.6% from the same period last year, down even more sharply from the third quarter when American buyers rushed to grab the $7,500 federal tax credit before it expired on October 1st. BYD's international performance was the real story. Overseas sales surpassed 1 million units for the first time, up 150% from the previous year, while domestic Chinese sales faced pressure from brutal price competition. BYD offset losses with aggressive international expansion, Europe, Latin America, Japan, the Middle East. BYD is everywhere Tesla used to dominate. In May 2025, BYD registered more battery-powered electric vehicles in Europe than Tesla for the first time, 7,231 versus Tesla's 7,165. If this shift surprises you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's being said? Elon Musk once laughed at BYD. October 2011, Bloomberg TV interview. He said, "I don't think they have a great product." He didn't see them as a competitor. 14 years later, BYD beat Tesla in its own game. BYD's founder and CEO Wang Chuanfu acknowledged at a December investor meeting that domestic sales slowdown was due to erosion of BYD's technological lead and insufficient product differentiation. But he promised new technologies coming soon. Analysts point to Tesla's stale vehicle lineup. The Model Y and refreshed Model 3 helped, but the lack of a cheaper, next-generation platform hurt growth. Tesla is still relying on the same two cars for 95% of its volume. Meanwhile, BYD is flooding the market with models in every segment, from the tiny Seagull to luxury sedans, compact electric city cars, hatchbacks, premium electric sedans, large SUVs, hybrid power options, electric buses, commercial vehicles. Tesla stock rose 1.2% in early trading Friday despite weak sales. Investors look past deliveries and focus on Musk's promises for a fleet of robo-taxis and an army of humanoid robots. But those rollouts have fallen well short of promises. Limited to Austin and San Francisco, not half the U.S. population, as Musk claimed. What's your take? Is Tesla pivoting away from being a car company? Let me know below. What's not being highlighted is the sales collapse isn't just about competition. It's about brand damage. Elon Musk's political activities in 2025 angered many potential American and European buyers. When he was leading the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency, there were regular protests outside Tesla showrooms in Europe and the United States. Reports of vandalism against Tesla cars and sites. Trump's policies ended the $7,500 EV tax credit in September 2025. That hurt Tesla's home market sales significantly. BYD isn't just winning on price. A standard Tesla Model 3 starts at roughly €41,000 in Europe. BYD Dolphin begins at around €35,500. The Dolphin Surf lists at about €22,990. Larger BYD vehicles like the Seal sit within the €40,700 to €48,200 range, similar to or below equivalent Tesla costs, even with European Union tariffs on Chinese-made electric vehicles. Following an anti-subsidy investigation, BYD remains competitively priced. Technology. BYD developed a 5-minute fast-charging platform. They're bringing that to Europe this year. They're building out European manufacturing. Plants in Turkey and southern Hungary opening in the next few months. Spain out for a third. BYD is also moving quickly in Latin America, Japan, and the Middle East. Tesla's market share in China, its second largest market, has been eroded. From 35% in 2023, BYD's market share fell to 29% in the first 11 months of 2025. But that's still massive, and Chinese competitors like Geely and Xiaomi are surging. Share this with someone who thinks Tesla still dominates the EV market. Impact on power, economy, and stability. This isn't just about car sales. This is about technological leadership, industrial capacity, supply chain control. China now controls the global electric vehicle supply chain, batteries, motors, rare earth elements, manufacturing capacity. BYD is the tip of that spear. Western automakers are struggling to compete. Legacy brands in North America, Europe, Japan, South Korea, all facing the same pressure. How do you compete with Chinese scale, Chinese subsidies, Chinese speed, energy transition implications? If China dominates EV production, they control a critical piece of the global decarbonization puzzle. That's geopolitical leverage. Employment. European auto manufacturers are laying off workers. Plants closing. Union strikes. The transition to electric isn't just technical. It's economic disruption. Trade policy. The EU imposed tariffs on Chinese EVs. The United States bars Chinese automakers entirely. But those protections won't last forever, and they come with costs. Higher prices for consumers. Slower adoption rates, less competition driving innovation. BYD has the scale, capital, and technology to develop autonomous cars and driverless taxis in partnership with Uber. They're not just a car company, they're an AI mobility company. If you're tracking industrial, competition, and tech leadership, this is a must-share story. Provocative close. Elon Musk laughed at BYD in 2011. He said they didn't have a great product. Who's laughing now? Asterisk. When a company goes from dismissed to dominant in 14 years, that's not luck, that's strategy, that's execution, that's scale. Tesla is pivoting to robo-taxis and AI. BYD is building The next Toyota. Different visions, but only one is selling millions of cars right now. Synthesis closed to minutes 3 stories. One thread. Power is moving. The United States just demonstrated it will use military force to secure energy resources. 303 billion barrels of oil don't belong to whoever sits in the presidential palace. They belong to whoever controls the security apparatus and the extraction infrastructure. Venezuela learned that lesson at 2 a.m. on January 3rd. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, supposed allies, are bombing each other's proxies over oil-rich provinces in Yemen. Coalition unity fractures when strategic interests diverge. Every regional player just recalculated their risk models. China's BYD dethroned Tesla as the world's top electric vehicle seller, not through better marketing, through better products, at better prices with better supply chains. The global automotive industry center of gravity just shifted east. Energy, alliances, industrial capacity, these aren't separate stories. They're connected signals. The world is realigning. Capital is repricing. Risk is accumulating in places most people aren't watching. If this briefing connected dots you hadn't seen, do 3 things right now. 1. Hit that like button. 2. Drop a comment on which risk concerns you most. 3. Share this with someone who needs to see these signals before they become obvious. Subscribe to this channel for risk analysis that arrives before headlines. Few are seeing this now. You're ahead. This is not opinion. This is alert. See you in the next briefing.